Hello. Today I'm going to be talking to one of our long-standing Second Helpings volunteers, Roland. Roland, thank you for agreeing to talk to us. Please tell us, what drew you to Second Helpings?
Well, I'm not a Stamford man, Richard, and when I came up to Stamford from Chichester to be closer to the grandchildren, I started to look around for a way to get into the local community. And I've always followed the food banks wherever I've lived. And I thought, well, there's a charity that I could volunteer for. I went to the Stamford Food Bank and they said, oh, we've got more than enough volunteers than we need. So I then was thinking about a similar thing when I was introduced to Second Helpings. And Second Helpings is a charity which takes surplus fresh food from the supermarkets and makes it available in the community. So I heard that this charity was run from a place called The Bunker. Now, The Bunker is the local term used by people for the community fresh food shop, which is run in the basement of Trinity Church here in Stamford. So I went to see George, who is the founder, and volunteered my services. And he said, I don't need anybody to help me with a bunker, but have you tried our cafe, which we run on Saturday mornings? So go along, give it a try, and see if there's a role for you there. So I went to the Second Helpings cafe, which essentially has two functions. The overriding principle of Second Helpings is feeding bellies, not bins. So it takes the fresh food, which is surplus in the supermarkets, and some very talented cooks turn it into some delicious meals on a Saturday morning. And they don't sell it, they provide it at a cafe, and you pay for the meal as much as you can afford. If you're like myself, who doesn't have to worry about the cost of a meal, then you make a contribution commensurate to what a meal will cost you. If you can't afford much for the meal, then you just pay what you can afford. So I went to the Saturday cafe and I looked around, and there were lots of cooks working very hard, and the front of house team was working very hard. But then I thought, what happens at the end of the meal? And I looked and I realized that the very same people who had come on at 8 o'clock in the morning to start preparing the food with all this materials which come from the supermarket were also the people who were having to do the clear up at the end. And so what I did was I went along and said, do you want me to be part of the clear up team? And I was hauled into the kitchen saying, you're just our man. And so there I was, a volunteer for Second Helpings, a small part of the overall team. And I'm not the only person who helps with the clear up. I'm not giving myself a pat on the back in that way, but I'm just using it to show that no matter what your skills are, there is a role for you in Second Helpings as a volunteer.
And you obviously enjoyed and thrived in that role, Roland. You sound very enthusiastic.
I have met a lot of people who I wouldn't normally have come across. And if as a volunteer, you're not having a bit of a fun and a laugh and a joke, then it just becomes work. And the whole point of volunteering is to achieve something whilst having a bit of fun yourself. But I think that the overall important thing for me is this almost unique thing of taking the fresh waste from the supermarkets and making sure that it ends up feeding people. Because everybody knows about food banks, but there aren't that many, examples of second helpings in the country, and that's what really attracted me.
Yes, that's very true. And tell me, Roland, what else do you like about second helpings?
I do like the Saturday Cafe. You get an opportunity to mix with a lot of people. Quite often when I'm talking to friends and things, they say, "Oh, Second Helpings Cafe, isn't that about feeding poor people who can't afford a meal?" No, that's not the point of it. It's a cafe where people who normally during the week you find in Costas and in restaurants can also go and enjoy a meal, and you get to meet a very wide range of people. And I think that is what I've drawn from the cafe most of all. In fact, I've come across people and I've enjoyed the company of people who I normally wouldn't have met in my normal social world.
So the coronavirus epidemic of the last few weeks or months even have been a challenge to many people in terms of food supply. I wonder, do you think that this will have had a positive effect long term on people's attitude towards food and food waste?
Yes and no. there's a good answer for you. But yes, I think it will change people's attitudes. But we have all been brought up for years and years and years to expect that you can just go into the supermarket and pick up broccoli, avocados, bananas, fresh bread. I mean, bread is a classic. Every supermarket of size likes to have its own bakery so it can waft the lovely smells through the supermarket, which means they're baking bread all through the day, which means that there's fresh bread if you go into the supermarket within the last hour. But similarly, at the end of that hour, the supermarket has got this bread which normally would have gone to waste, but now finds its way to second helpings and can help people in the local community.
Indeed, and that is, of course, at the heart of what second helpings is all about, making sure that food doesn't go to waste. So thank you for that. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about second helpings?
No, apart from one thing, to say that I'm missing it. I'm one of those volunteers who has had to self-isolate, and I think that one of the things that has changed with the attitudes of the coronavirus is you suddenly appreciate what are the important things in your life. And I have to say that I am missing the Saturday Cafe and seeing my friends and colleagues in the kitchen, and I can't wait for the virus to get over so that I can get back to the cafe.
Absolutely. I'm sure you're not the only person who's missing the cafe. And let's hope it can be reopened as soon as possible. Thank you for talking to me. It's always a pleasure to talk to a fellow volunteer, and best of luck. I hope you're soon out of quarantine.
Thank you.
Details of all Second Helpings activities can be found on our website at www.secondhelpings.org.uk, including our opening times.